Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com, and we are here today with lesson number 32 on learning how to use the Arduino microcontroller. And I think this is really a very important lesson, and I'm a little bit embarrassed that I haven't hit the lesson up until now because it's something we probably should have done a lot earlier on. And what that is, we're going to learn how to use functions. And so what I need you to do is pour yourself a nice big cup of strong coffee. Fire up your Arduino and let's learn how to use functions. Now this is the reason that functions are so important. As you begin to write more and more complicated programs, your programs start getting harder and harder to manage, harder and harder to keep track of. And so what a function is it's a little block of code which you call from the void loop. So if you want to do a function, a certain specific task, you write a little program that does that task, and then you call that program or that function from your Arduino void loop. And so in order to demonstrate how to do this, we're going to write a program, but we're going to go back and kind of first of all do it the old way, which is really the wrong way, and then we're going to show you how to take that and turn it into the right way. So again, get your coffee and let's get going. I will begin by moving myself out of the way, okay? And then what I need you to do is fire up a nice fresh Arduino IDE, and then let's start coding, okay? And so what I'm going to do is, I think a program that would be very good to sort of demonstrate this concept of functions would be, let's write a program that averages, okay? Because that's kind of a neat review thing. And so I'm going to write it without functions, and then I'm going to change it real quick to make it with functions. But I think if we do it the old way, then you'll more clearly understand how what we're trying to do. So let me get this over here a little better. Get my studio lighting a little bit better here. Okay, so let's think. We're going to average grades. So if we're going to average grades, what's the first thing that you would need to know? Well, you would need to know how many of grades you have. How many grades you have, is that going to be a round number or an in-between number? Well, you're always going to have 5, 6, 7 round numbers for grades, and so we're going to declare a variable int and then num grades. Okay, so we've got that. Well, we're going to have arrays, and remember, in I believe our last lesson, it would have been lesson 31, I believe, we learned how to do arrays, and so we're going to have to really think about, if we're going to have a list of grades, we're probably going to need an array. And so how do we declare an array? Well, this will be a float because the grades could be 91.5 or something like that. So I'm going to declare it grades. And now to make it an array, right, we put a bracket, and then that bracket tells us how many slots we're going to have. So let's say you could have up to 15 grades. You don't have to have 15 grades, but you could have up to 15 grades. Now, if we're going to be putting numbers in that array, we're probably going to have some for loops. So let's create a counter int, and we'll call it j. That's just going to be the index that we use on our for loops. What are we calculating? We're calculating average, so we'll need a variable for average. And then if we're averaging the grades, right, we got to add all the grades together, so we need a variable for that, because I call that the bucket. That's the bucket that keeps track of the sum, the addition of all the grades together. And that needs to be a float too, right, because we could have, you could make a 93.5, and then therefore your average would maybe, the bucket needs to keep track of floating point numbers as well. So we're just going to call that bucket. All right, so those are the variables that we're going to need. Now let's hop down to the void setup. And in the void setup, what do we need? Well, we're not controlling a circuit or anything, but we will probably want to print and input data, so we will go serial.begin, and I will use the always trusty 9600. Isn't it amazing how even with such faster speeds, we always go back to what we're comfortable with? Okay, we're going to jump down here to the void loop, and we are going to start writing the program the old way, the wrong way. But once we write it this way, then we can turn it into a function-based program, or more of a modular type of programming. But let's just get the basics in here to begin with. So let's start. If we are going to average grades, what's the first thing that we need to know? Well, you need to know how many grades they're going to be. So you've got to ask the user, how many grades do you want to average? How do we get input from the user? Three things. Remember, we ask them for the input, we wait, and then we read. So first thing we will do is ask for the input. So I'll say serial.println, how many grades? Question mark. Always put that little extra space so your answer doesn't run into your question. Okay, close that. Don't forget your semicolon. We've asked, what do we do? Wait. How do we wait? We create a while loop. While, ooh, don't forget the H, while, serial.available, open, close parentheses, equal, 0. So this is saying while there is no input entered yet, what do we do? Well, we create a clause that does absolutely nothing. Open and close curly bracket. So I have an open curly bracket, a closed curly bracket. And what does that do? It simply waits for the input from the user. So we ask, we have waited, and now what do we do? We read. What variable do we want? Num grades. Okay. Num grades equal serial, capital S, serial.parse int, open close colon. Okay, why am I making num grades an int, parse int? Because it was declared as an int and it's going to be a round number. So now we have asked, we've waited, and we've read. So at this point, we know how many grades the user wants to input. Okay, once we know that, then what would be the next thing that you would want to do? Well, you would want to get the grades for the person. And, you know, he might say 3 grades, he might say 10 grades, he might say 7 grades. So what do we need to get those grades from him? It would be a for loop, okay? And so we're going to go for, open, and then remember we declared j as our index, so j is equal to 1 colon. How long do we loop? Well, as long as j is less than or equal to num grades. You guys know that the first position in the array is really 0, but I don't have to put anything in the 0th position. I like to just start things in the first position, and that way it's just a lot easier to intuitively think. But the purist would say start with 0 so you're not wasting memory. But I am not the purist. I like to do things simple so that they will work. And then we say j is equal to j plus 1. You guys should know how to do a for loop. If you don't, go back and watch that video. Okay, so now we open the clause of the for loop, and now what do we want to do inside of the for loop? Well, we want to get the grades, and so in order to get a grade from someone, what 3 things do we need to do? Ask for it, wait, and read. So let's ask for it. Serial.println, and then we're going to say, please, I always like to be polite. Put the please in there. Okay, please input a grade. Okay, I always like to put the colon. Okay, and then close that, and then don't forget the colon. So we've asked. Now what do we do? Wait. And I'm going to kind of make things go faster by just copying this wait from up here. Okay, so now I've got my serial, while serial.available equal 0, I wait. And then what do I want to do? I want to read. But this time, what am I going to read? Well, I'm going to read into the array. So I'm going to say grades. Remember, if you don't understand arrays, go back. What's the index? Well, I'm inside of this for loop. So I'm going to make it j. Grades of j is equal to, now I'm going to read it. So I'm going to say serial.parse float. Okay, so we're going to read a float, and where is the float going to go? It is going to go into grades. Grades is an array. What position does it go into? It goes into j. So by going through this for loop, we're filling up that grades array of j. And really, if you guys don't understand arrays, make sure to go back and watch the last video, or what I'm saying might not make a lot of sense. Okay, so now we're reading in the grades, so we're going to have a list of grades. So grades is equal to serial.parseFloat. So now at this point, we should have the grades. All right, now once we have the grades, what was the whole purpose of this program? The whole purpose of this program is we are trying to average the grades. So now what we want to do is average them. Well, how do you average grades together? You add them all up. So I've got this list of grades, but how do I add them all up? Well, I have a bucket and I put them in the bucket. So what does bucket equal to? Bucket equals to whatever was in it before plus the new grade. So I'm going to step through a for loop and I'm going to take each number and add it to whatever was in the bucket before. So I'm going to say again, for j equal 1, for j equal 1 to j is less than or equal to loop as long as j is less than or equal to num grades, okay? And then j equal j plus 1, all right? And then I'm going to open that clause. And now what do I want to do while I am inside this clause? Well, I want to say that bucket is going to be equal to bucket plus what? Grades. And which grades? It's going to be grades of I. Okay, so there we go. Now, if I'm going to be adding this to the bucket, I better come up here and I better set bucket equal to 0 just to make sure that it starts out empty. That's just a good thing to do. So bucket is equal to bucket plus grades of not I, but J. I hope you guys caught that. Okay, so what is this for loop going to do? It's going to take all the grades and it's going to add them to bucket. So now bucket is going to have what? The sum of all the grades. Well, now once I have that, how do I find the average? Average is equal to bucket, that's the sum of all the numbers, divided by num grades. Okay, average is equal to bucket divided by num grades. Does that make sense? I think it does. All right. Now, another thing, just like I started with buckets equal to 0 in the declaration, here I also want to make sure that I empty the bucket. So I'm going to say bucket equals, or I guess after I calculate the average, okay, I'm going to empty the bucket. So I'll say bucket equals 0, put the colon, semicolon there, colon, whichever one it is, put the colon there. Okay, and so remember, if I ran the program a second time, it would have junk in the bucket. So you always have to calculate the average, you empty your bucket out. Okay, so this is very, very good. So now I have average is equal to bucket divided by num grades, empty the bucket, and now I need to do some printing, right? So the first thing I want to do is print out the list of grades. So what would I say? Serial.print line, and then what am I going to do? I'm going to say your grades are, okay. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to print all the grades out. Well, that's that array. So what do I need to do? I need to make another for loop. And I think I'm going to just take this one here because it's already handy. Okay, it's the same, it's going to be the same for loop over and over. So for j is equal to 1. Okay. For j is equal to 1 to num grades, and then what am I going to print in here? I'm going to say serial.println, and then I'm going to say grades, and which grades? Well, grades of j. Okay, and then I'm going to close it, and then what am I going to do? I am going to close that clause. I'm going to close off that for loop. Okay. And then just for good measure, I'm going to print a blank line, just to kind of make the formatting look good. That's quote, quote. That means print nothing. Okay, and now I'm going to say serial.println, and then I'm going to say your average is, okay, your average is, okay, and then serial dot, oh, I'm going to do a print on that one so that it prints it on the same line. So println takes you to the next line, but if I just do this, it'll put the number on the same line of your average is. Okay, serial println, this time I want it to go to the next line, and I will print average. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is serial dot println, and I'm going to put, just for good looks, I'm going to put another blank line. Okay, Boom. Now, how many mistakes did you guys catch me make that I did not catch? I think I missed some parentheses in there. Okay, it wants me to save. Okay, I'll save that. Okay, all that nonsense. All right, let's see. Oh, forgot a colon there. Hope you guys caught that. Is it going to go? All right, very interesting. Let's see what happens. Okay, how many grades? Okay, I'm going to say 3 grades. Oops, get in there. I'm going to say 3 grades. Okay, please input a grade. You guys are very good students, so I'm going to say 97, 98, and 100. Okay, it says your grades are 97, 98, and 100. Your average is 98.33, and then it's ready to run again. So boom. Do you see what we just did? Do you see what we just did? We wrote a program that averages grades, all right? Now, let's get to the topic of this lesson, which is functions, all right? Now, if you come in and look at this, I've got all this print line, how many grades, blah, 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 blah. You see, if I just handed you this program and I hadn't stepped you through it, it would be kind of confusing, all right? So what I want to show you is I want to show you how to, let's see, what is this thing here? Okay. All right, that seems to be working. Let's see. So now what I want to do is I want to know why this thing is saying serial port COM6 is busy. That might not have downloaded. Okay. I think I might not have downloaded that. So let's make sure all those are closed. Let's try it one more time. I don't like to see any orange down there. Okay, that time it worked. Let's make sure the program actually works. So I open it up. How many grades? 3. Okay. 97. 98. 100. Okay, your grades are 97, 98, 100. Your average is 98.33. How many grades? Okay, so that in fact is, let's see. I actually have somebody trying to contact me asking for Arduino help. I'm in the middle of making a video. I can't help. Okay, so you see that the program works, but now this is the problem. If you come in and look at all this, it's kind of hard to figure out what is what. So let's break this up into chunks, okay? So let's just say that if you were going to tell me how to input grades, if you were going to tell me you wanted to write a program to calculate average, what would you want to do? You would want to input the grades, you would want to average the grades, and then you would want to print the grades. Okay, and you could say print the grades and the average, but you would want to input the grades, you would want to average the grades, and you would want to print the grades. So wouldn't it be nice if I could just come up here and inside the void loop, I'm just going to move our old code down. What if I just said, what do you want to do? Well, you want to input, and I need to switch something over here. Give me just a second. Okay. So what you want to do is, let's say that what you want to do is input grades. So you just tell it input grades. Does it know what that means? No, but we'll teach it later. So what do you want to do? You want to input grades. You want to average grades. Okay. And then what do you want to do? You want to print grades. Okay. Now, if you came in and looked at a program and all your void loop said was input grades, average grades, and print grades, wouldn't it be like really, really easy? And wouldn't it be easy to see what the program would say? Oh, look, it's averaging. It's going to ask you for the grades. It's going to average them, and then it's going to print them. So you see how much clearer this is? This is a function. This is a function. And this is a function. Now, if we're going to call a function, we better teach Arduino what that function is. And so what we do is we're now going to define this function. So we're going to come down after the void loop, and we're going to create a new function, and it's going to be called void, and then what's it going to be called? Input grades. Okay, and then it has the open parenthesis, close parentheses, and then it is going to open curly bracket. Okay, and I really don't like this new Arduino closes it for you, but that's what it does. Okay, so what would that do? Well, that would basically do this part of the code that we had up here, where we ask them how many grades, we wait for them, and then we read in the grades. Okay, so we go from, we ask for the grade, we ask how many grades, okay, and then we read the grades in all the way through there. Okay, and so I'm just going to cut that out. All right, because we don't want that in the void loop. I'm going to put that down here like this. Okay, so now void input grades serial print line, how many grades, while serial.available, I ask, and then I read them in. So now what is going to happen when your program comes into the void loop? What's the first thing it's going to execute? Input grades. How does it know what to do? It's like it jumps down here and then it runs this code. And then when it's done running this code, what does it do? It jumps back up here. Then what's it going to do? It's going to do average grades. Well, I got to teach it how to average grades. So what do I need? I need down here another function. So I'm going to say void. I'm going to say average grades. Okay, average grades. And then I'm going to open. And then Mr. Arduino IDE usually knows to. I wonder why that didn't close that one for me. Okay, I might have a void average grades. Okay, well, I might have to close that one. Usually it adds those in there, but that time it didn't. And now that makes me wonder if this one up here did. So let me make sure. Yep, that goes with that. Okay, so I think we're right on our curly brackets. Ooh, it did go in and add one after I added. Okay. Now we got open and close. All right. So how do we average grades? Well, that's this part here where we go and then we add them to the bucket and then we average it and then we say the bucket is 0. So we're going to take that code and we're going to cut it. Okay. And then we're going to come down here and put it in. Is this making logical sense? What does average grades do? The function average grades. It goes for j equal 1, as it loops as long as j is less than or num grades, and then it takes bucket and it adds to bucket the next grade in the list. And then it says average is equal to bucket divided by num grades. All right. Now, what's the next thing it's going to do is it's going to print grades. So I got to teach it how to print grades. So I come down here and I say void. That's telling it that it's a function, and it's print grades. Okay, print grades. And then I'm going to open and return, and then there is my close. And then what does print grades do? It does all this nonsense up here where it says your grades are all the way down to there. So I'm going to cut that. Okay, I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to come down here and put that in print grades. So does this make sense? I just don't want to have to retype everything in. But now, what does the function void print grades do? Well, it prints your grades are, and then it prints the list of grades, and then it prints a blank line, and then it prints your averages, and then it prints the average. Does that make sense? Okay. So now let's look at what our void loop looks like. So now let's go in and look at our program. What does our program do? It inputs grades, it averages the grades, and then it prints the grades. Okay? So and that's all the void loop is, from here to here. Input grades, average grades, print grades. So if you came in and looked at this code, it's really, really clear what I'm doing. But then you could logically break it down and think, how does he actually input the grades? Well, what would you do? You would look at that function and come down here to that function, input grades. It's going to start here, and it's going to come down to here. And you say, oh, look, he's asking for how many grades, then he's waiting, then he's reading how many grades, and then he has a loop set up to fill the array up with that number of grades. And then what he does is he puts the list together. Oh, I see what input grades is. It's doing what he says. Input grades. What does average grades do? It takes that list, it averages them. Then what does print do? It prints it. So you see, you can logically break the program up. Okay, so that is how you do functions. And it's really important because now if I ever had another program where I needed to average something, I could go get that little function and I could use it again. Or what if I needed to average a bunch of different lists of grades? I wouldn't have to keep writing it and writing it and writing it in a program. If I had a more complicated program that like wanted to average 10 lists of grades, I could just still use these blocks, calling them like get grades for this person, get grades for this person, get grades for this person, average, average, average. You see, you could use these big blocks, and then the programming is a lot easier. Okay. Now, you need to watch the next lesson because this lesson is just the concept of breaking the functionality down. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to see a way to do functions where we kind of start passing parameters back and forth. And so I've done this with global variables. And so the next thing that we're going to have to learn is if we're really going to learn how to do functions, we're going to have to learn the difference between local variables and global variables. And so in the next lesson, we're going to learn the difference between local variables and global variables. And then after that, the next thing that we will do is learn how to be more elegant in programming with functions, where instead of having global variables, we start passing variables back and forth from the functions. Okay, I hope this was useful. Would love to hear from you guys down below. It's been a while since I've made a video. If you want me to make more videos, give me a little encouragement, give me a thumbs up, think about subscribing to the channel, share this with other people. And as always, enjoy some really, really good coffee. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.